paint my fairy faces, I begin with some blushing. And I also put it on the lips. And what I'm using, this color is a mixture of the Genesis paints. It's the Flesh 06, which is kind of a taupey flesh color, mixed with some of the Pyro Red, which is a pinkish red color. And so it kind of ends up being this kind of a pinky tannish color. And I find it works really well for shading my dolls. I have mixed in with this also some of the Genesis Glaze, so it's a light coat. And I keep a dry brush handy. And I go over and help to blend these edges in. I work in a lot of layers. So usually the first coat is far lighter than what she'll end up with eventually. There's a little bit on this dry brush, so I'm just going in around the edges of her nostrils. I just try to go wherever the face would be naturally shaded, and I like to just use the blush color around the eye area as well, because the eyes are a naturally shaded area. And so when you're working with this small scale of a doll, they just really aren't big enough to make their own shading and reflect it how it would be in a person. So you just have to kind of fill it in with your paints. So you work a bit with illusion to help it be more realistic looking. Also, while I'm working on this first coat, I like to go in and start layering it on the ears as well, because I will be baking this with the Genesis heat gun in between layers, and it can be time consuming to wait for the head to cool each time, so I try to make the most of each layer. This is just that same blushing color. It's kind of a pinky taupe. And you just make sure that you get it in there all smooth. It's one light, thin layer. You don't want any thick areas. And that's about how she looks when she's ready to be heat set the first time with the Genesis heat gun. Once she's cooled again, I go in with the next layer. And again, each time I try to catch the lips, because lips take many, many layers. And so it's nice to each time just give it another thin, thin layer. Those look cute, nice and pink. And here I'm mostly just putting the paint in place, wanting the apples of the cheek to be darkest. And then I just kind of smooth in the edges and around it with the dry brush again. And the ears I want a bit darker as well. Then when I have just a little bit of paint on the brush, I just kind of go in the areas I want shadowed a little bit more, the inside of the eye, and the eyelid, the corners of the eye. I'm even going to give her forehead a little bit of a rosy glow. Then I'm just smoothing it all in with a dry brush. Alright, now before the next bake, I'm going to start on her eyes a bit. And I'm just taking a liner brush with a little bit of brown. And I'm going to line these eyes. It's crazy dark at first. Then I just lighten it right back up with the dry brush. So I'm just kind of filling in the crease that I made when I was sculpting. Just a little bit more paint here. Now I'm dragging it over to the corners a bit as well. Darken those up a little. Next I will be lining the eyes. I'm just using the Genesis brown that comes in the sampler kit, mixed with some of the glaze to thin it. And I just kind of line each eye. Then I'll repeat this for the bottom and show her to you. Both eyes are very lightly lined and it's largely dry brushed away too. And next I want to go in and work on her eyebrows, and then I'll come back to lining her eyes.